Just did this escape room, this amazing escape room last night.
I would never do an escape room.
I think you'd be good at it.
No, I have anxiety just hearing about it. I'll wait for you outside with a cocktail.
Hey, from New York City, everyone. It's Evelyn, and you're listening to Reppin'. Thanks always for being here. I'm so excited about my guest today. He's a model and actor whose credits that include mega hits like Aquaman, Power Rangers, Mortal Kombat, and most recently, you saw him as bad boy Kerwin Tan from the CW's Kung Fu. His work in television, films, and his modeling career has taken him around the world multiple times. He's comfortable on red carpets, in front of cameras, on screen, and on magazine covers. But who is he off camera? What if I told you that he struggled with bullying as a kid and how he's always felt like an outcast? Today, he shares some of those powerful moments and how those experiences have taught him to be a voice for the voiceless. Turn it up because we're getting real with this multifaceted talent. Please say hello to Ludi Lin. Ludi, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me. So excited. Rappin'.
I know. 你好嘛, should we do this completely in 廣東話?
Oh, really? Oh, man. I can't wait to see what other surprises. Oh, 我尋日啱食咗點心啊，同大馬。
Okay. Well, this interview is going to be very short then because my Chinese is really bad. 但係我都好想飲茶，但係第二次你嚟探我哋一齊去飲茶啦。
好啊。
That's the extent of the Cantonese part of this.
Barely hanging on as well. I haven't had much practice in Cantonese in a while.
Seriously, thank you so much for being here. From what I understand of your background, you have always been this sort of globe trotter. You were born in mainland China, and then you went to Hong Kong with your family, and then you went to Australia, hence the super cool accent that you have. Can you tell me a little bit about, like, when you were growing up, what was that like for you? Because you were moving all over the place, and I would imagine that it would have given you a lot of different perspectives and vantage points in terms of your own identity and belonging and who you are and how you're treated. Because I am completely Chinese, first generation, born and raised in one of the boroughs of New York. But even then, I really struggled in terms of understanding how I fit in and struggled with acceptance. For you, what was it like growing up? Can you share some of your experiences and memories?
Yeah, I can really relate with that, actually. I think what I really believe in is that no matter who you are, you'll always be struggling. You're always going to struggle, but no matter what path you walk, it'll always be meaningful. Like you said, I moved around a lot when I was a kid, and for me, it was just another part of growing pain, I think.
Okay.
Because everyone goes through like the pains of growing up, right? Like through puberty, and your joints ache, your voice changes, you're awkward, you don't know how to move, you don't know how to deal with other people. I went through all of that, but just in a different respect. When you said I globe-trotted, I felt more like I was being tossed around. Because when you're a kid, you don't really have choice.
Right.
And I think that's really important because that perspective changes the whole experience. If you're being forced to do something, if someone has exiled you to another place, which is what I felt like when I was a kid, leaving my family and my parents to, well, first of all, leaving my very close immediate family in China to go to Hong Kong with my mom, and then to be off in Australia alone. It wasn't out of my volition. It wasn't my choice to do that. I wasn't like an 8-year-old kid going, oh, I'm going backpacking and to learn another culture and in the great land down under. So it was painful. After I graduated from high school, I went backpacking out of my own volition for a couple of years because I was choosing to do so.
Okay.
I think that perspective changes everything. And I think the perspective that I gain in hindsight, looking back, like I will give speed to my younger self from feeling abandoned and feeling like he didn't fit into any place and wasn't there long enough to even learn didn't even learn the rules of the game, much less how to play the game, much less being involved.
Right.
But in hindsight, I can still take that pain and turn it into something useful and helpful for myself.
That must have been really hard when you're a kid because obviously we're still kind of figuring out who the hell we are. And acceptance is such a big part of growing up. And feeling abandoned, I think that's tough for anyone at any age. So when you were being tossed around, how did you deal with that? And did you find kids that you can relate to that were like you, that were Asian? Or did you get pointed out that you were Asian because there weren't any other people that looked like you? What was that like for you, especially going all these different places and struggling with feeling abandoned?
Okay, I think for anyone, memories like this, memories of being an outcast, being an outsider, or memories of racism, I think for me, there's one question to ask is when did I first experience racism?
Mm-hmm.
What's the first memory me experiencing racism? And that memory, is it me being racist towards someone else or someone else being racist toward me? So did I feel like I was sidelined and looked at as other, or did I look at someone else as different, as other, or less than? I think that's the difference between someone like myself who's born in Asia and now lives in Canada or America, like an Asian American, versus someone who is born in North America. Because when I was born in China, there wasn't even a concept of race. Everyone's just Chinese. So the first opportunity, more often than not, is we see a different thing first that we're used to, because babies aren't put into the world experiencing diversity. We don't get a whole gamut of information.
Right.
Children are born in an immediate environment. And even my expanded environment within my city, within my country, most of them are composed of people that look like me, that act like me and feel like me.
Right.
I think the first time I've experienced something different, and there's a difference in degree and a difference in kind, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm experiencing something, a difference in kind is when I went to Hong Kong, where it was actually a British colony. And that was I think it was a mind-blowing experience because I was at the receiving end of racism and also a conduit of racism at the same time. I was taught to be racist at the same time because in Hong Kong, being a British colony, I remember the expats, the British expats, the Western expats there, they were seen as like a higher class of citizen. They seemed to be more poised, versed, more educated than the common Asian citizens. Myself, who just moved there with my mom from the mainland,
right?
She was well educated. She was studying to be a journalist and she was a stage actress in her own right. She was very smart, so beautiful. But as soon as you get to Hong Kong with all that knowledge and experience and all that advantage that she had brought with her, she also had to start a job just by cleaning floors and working in fast food restaurants because she was looked at as like a rural bumpkin, like a country bumpkin coming from mainland China. But also over there, there's a lot of like Filipino housemaids and a lot of like South Asian, East Indian, because they were also, India was a British colony for so long.
Right.
So they were also outcasts and even outcasts by the Chinese. As you might know, like the Asian culture, the Chinese culture specifically is a very reclusive culture.
Yes.
So we other people easily. And I think some racism is just almost integrated into our colloquial speak, like things like Wailo,
which translates literally into white ghost.
So I was taught all of that right when I got into Hong Kong. So there was a very distinct class system in that the classes were separated by the color of your skin or your cultural background. So I understand that. That's the foundation of, I guess, my first experience with racism. It's at both ends of the spectrum. Do you know what I mean? To be taught that didn't feel good.
Right.
And to be at the receiving end for something that I didn't choose and I just felt lost and cast it aside. So I think everyone needs to ask themselves, at what point were you first racist? And at what point were you being racist toward?
So what age were you at this point? Do you remember?
I was 4.
You were 4 when you noticed
4.
all of this? Wait, okay.
Yeah, I was 4. I think it was around 5 when I started going to school when I noticed all of this. But yes, when you're 4, because I was around my mom all the time and I saw her interactions with people. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So passively, you're absorbing that knowledge. And of course, at that time, you're dependent on your parents. when you see something new, like when I see something just fresh and new, I want to know about it.
Yeah.
And all the knowledge you're getting is from your parents and the adults that are supposed to be supplying you with information.
Okay, first of all, you were a very advanced 4-year-old. Because when I was 4, I was just trying to get gum out of my hair. I didn't realize like any of this racism because it's so indoctrinated and so pervasive. Like you said, and I think you said it beautifully, we're absorbing it without even realizing. When did you actually go, oh, this is what this is? And when you were seeing this, when you were younger, right? Your mom is this accomplished journalist who's educated. She comes to Hong Kong and she's quote unquote demoted. How did that affect you? Because when I saw my parents get picked on, regardless of what age, especially as a kid, because you look up to your parents for the most part, how did that inform you when you saw your mom, who is so smart, who is so talented, who is beautiful, but then not be able to have the opportunities that she deserves? How did that sort of inform you as a kid? And how did that sort of color how you saw the world?
Well, that made me very defensive in that I really wanted to defend her. Because one, I knew that one big aspect of why she was looked down upon was because she couldn't speak Cantonese. She could only speak Mandarin. At that time, again, coming from mainland China, you have that stereotype of being a country bumpkin who's just like going to Hong Kong to etch out a living. Because at that time, even cleaning floors, she was getting paid maybe 10 times more than she would have working as a journalist on the mainland. But then she couldn't speak the language.
Right.
So first thing I knew that I had to do was to learn Cantonese quickly as possible. And I wasn't a child prodigy guru by any means. All of this comes from hindsight. So I can feel bad for the kid who's just like trying to get gum out of their hair and feeling pain. But I see it and I go, that's why I was determined to learn the language at that time. I tried so hard.
Right.
For me, it was like, ease my mom. It was something as simple as when she went to the vegetable market and she couldn't explain to the shopkeep what she wanted to buy. I want to be there and go, this is what she wants, without them going, what? What did you say?
Yeah.
I don't understand. Speak Cantonese. And then in hindsight, that also taught me just how important communication is. Being able to communicate with other people on a wavelength that they understand. I think without communication, you're going to be isolated. And if you're isolated, it's so much easier to make you another.
Yeah, that's a good point. I understand that now you're looking back, but when you were growing up and you were moving around, the opportunities you were either given or denied, how did it shift, or did it, from one place to the next? Obviously, it shifted for your mom when she went to Hong Kong. And just a quick anecdote, it's funny that you were saying like being so defensive and your mom going to the vegetable market and communications is being so key, because when my mom was an immigrant here and she was tiny, she got bullied her whole life, pretty much, unfortunately. And I remember she told me a story that, and this is one of the sort of foundational things that she passed on to me. She came here from Hong Kong. She didn't really speak the language. She went and got a job, and then she was trying to get lunch and she didn't know the word spinach. And the guy was like, what would you like? And she was like, the green thing right there. And he laughed in her face. It really sucked, obviously. But the point of that for me, when she taught me this, was like, you always need to be humble and just always be willing to learn, and you have to not let other people affect you. So when you talked about your mom going to the vegetable stand, I mean, I can definitely understand the challenges and all the nuances that exist right in that situation.
Yeah.
But when you were growing up and going all over, from traveling from one place to the next, how did that shape you?
I think you hit it right on the nose there. You said the opportunities that I was given were stripped of. I think a lot of times when someone strips you of an opportunity, they inadvertently push you into another direction that opens some more opportunities. I think one of the reasons I always vie and root for the underdog is that when I come into a new place and I get bullied or seen as an outlier, or the opportunity to surround myself with a supportive and easygoing group of friends without any fighting was taken away. So then what I was left with was to fight for the underdogs that were outcasted just like me. And there's always people like that. There's always going to be people like that, I think. I think there's a great irony that the people that you fail to celebrate or unjustly hurt become stronger leaders and representatives of a group of people that are unfairly treated as well. It's irony, and it's just how the universe works, that the person that you step on become the leader of the underdogs.
As you're saying this, it's striking me in the sense that, A, that's so true and beautifully said. At some point, you were the underdog. Can you share that experience and what you clocked and how that's maybe that difficult situation at the time has actually made you a lot better?
Yeah, these situations happen over and over again to me because I was never in one place long enough to even sustain the friends I eventually make.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many lessons here. But another really ironic thing that happens usually is I usually befriend the people that I fight with. As soon as I realize that I stand up for myself and I won't lie down and just take it. So there's something in there that speaks of the honesty in fighting, I think. This might also come from my martial arts background when one of my coaches once told me that a fist is the most honest speaker in the ring because when it hits you, it hurts and it's not going to lie.
Okay.
In Canada in high school, the group of friends that I was closest with eventually, they were my snowboarding buddies. We skateboarded together, we went to the provincials and won lots of championships doing slalom on our snowboards. Picked on me to no end in the beginning.
Like for real, for real?
For real, like picking on me. A lot of them, they didn't even need to raise their fist to get me into a fight. They would provoke other people to fight me while they belittle me with words. Do you know what I mean? For example, they would make fun of me because I had a flat head and what they claim was a flat head. And it's pretty flat. So a flat head back here. And also I spoke with a funny accent, but I look Asian and that didn't seem right to them. I think that might have been one of the founding stories of why I wanted to become an actor as well, because I realized I needed to learn how to speak like a Canadian or an American to stop this. Like I needed to change myself, I felt like. But in the end, it became like one of the arsenals. It's that perspective thing again. It's how you choose to use it, right?
Right.
You either go, I don't like myself, I have to change myself, or I go, I learned something else. That's just another tool in my tool belt. But anyways, they would make fun of me for anything, really. There's the usual thing, they sell margarine lunch boxes full of fermented cabbage and rice.
Oh, no, I get that. Yeah. Yep.
My mom came to me on the first day of high school. The first day of high school, she came with me and stood in the back of the room because she was worried about me and she couldn't even speak English. That was horrible. That was like the wrong move for a parent to make.
Oh, I love her.
And the more conscious I was, the more, yeah, we laugh now, but the more conscious I was, the more like social faux pas, the more mistakes that I would make.
That is mortifying though for that time.
The worst thing is the person that made fun of me the most and was the most aggressive and fought me physically the most was another Chinese person.
Wait, what?
Yes, it was another Chinese person. Now I understand. He would make fun of me for being more Chinese than he was.
Okay.
Because if they found a new target, he would realize that it would take the pressure off of him.
Oh, I see.
You need someone to be the scapegoat to take your place as the bottom bitch.
So you became the bottom bitch.
So yeah, he wanted me to be the bottom bitch, but I refused to be the bottom bitch. So I would fight him every single day. I went to the principal's office with him every single day. We had to do these like cigarette butt duties. That probably wouldn't fly nowadays. We had to go around the school picking up cigarette butts that people on the ground. And then we had to lay them like little corpses in front of the office. This will be written up in a scene someday, I think. But yes, so the ironic thing is we actually bonded over that experience because we were the ones bleeding. We were the ones hurting each other. And then we were the ones going around picking up these crappy little cigarette butts. And then it was humiliating to like stack them in front of the office every single day. And it wasn't a big school. It was like 500 people.
Mm-hmm.
So that literally the whole school knew what we were doing. And eventually we just thought it was stupid. And once we became friends, the other group of people realized that they found each other because we pushed them too close.
I get
Now
you.
they're stronger together than apart. Eventually, they couldn't make fun of either of us anymore. And then we all became just part of a clique, part of the same group. So that was interesting. That's just one example. I've had plenty of other experiences.
You're fighting? Maybe that's why your mom was in the back of the class. Just saying.
We're going to have to ask her. I don't think she knew about most of those experiences.
Your ass was in the principal's office every day. How did she not know?
Yeah, she wasn't there in the country, but in the times that she was around, she was definitely upset. I knew I'd get like a double beating. I knew I'd get punished by the school. And when I go home, my mom's going to put the real smack down. But then speaking of that, this thing I'll always remember that's life-changing to me.
What's that?
Is that I had this wonderful teacher. She's just the kind of person that exudes so much love and care for her students. And she's a really caring person. I think this is the right reason to become a teacher. If you know that every kid is just like a broken little basket trying to blossom, just there to take care of them and curate them and give them support. Because she would see me fight every single day. And once the principal, I requested my mom to come in and I was like, oh no. It's so funny that I can face like 10 bullies and I have to fight them all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like, fine.
But you're going to shit your pants if it's your mother.
The moment they say that we're going to bring your mom in for a talk, I'm like, oh no. So my mom came in and they were in there alone forever. My mom and the principal. And then I was staying with Miss Watkins, just like shaking my booties, like you just said, shitting my pants. And then my mom comes around, stands at the homeroom's door. She's about to take me home. I had this look at Miss Watkins like, it's been good knowing you. Do you know what I mean? Like, you in the next life.
You're dead. You're so dead.
Miss Watkins, actually, before my mom walked away with me, she took my mom aside and she was like, she told my mom, you know, I see Ludi fight every single day. I see him fight every single day. That's true. But I only see him fight for what he thinks is right. And I really teared up at that moment. It still affects me a lot when I think about it, that someone would stand up for you, especially when the people that are closest to you, especially when, say, the Chinese kid who was fighting me, anyone was on my side in this room, it should be you. It wasn't, and that felt like a betrayal. And when I'm fighting these things every single day, these people, these bullies, anyways, yeah, these people every single day, and the person that you expect to be on your side, hopefully, are your parents, just helping you lick your wound or giving you the space and telling you it's going to be all right.
Right.
But no, you know that at home you're going to get a rougher beating than you will get in school with the bullies. That hurts the most.
Yeah.
But at the unlikeliest instance, when someone actually stands up for you, those instances and those words will carry a lifetime.
It's very powerful. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Ludi, so you tell me this, but it hits me pretty hard because not only is this teacher standing up for you, it feels like she sees you too. Do you know what I mean? And acknowledges it and put language to it. I mean, at that particular time, did you realize that you were someone who was standing up for your beliefs, or were you just trying to survive? I guess my question is, sometimes you do things and you don't necessarily, in a very concise way, have language of putting together, hey, I'm standing up for myself and I'm not going to be bullied and I'm standing up for what's right. You're just like fighting and surviving. But here this woman is, from an outside perspective, not only coming to your defense, but also when she said that, I would imagine that you would feel seen.
Yeah, I think we didn't have the words, like we didn't have that word seen.
Yeah.
I think now that's exactly what it is. That someone sees you in all your pain and all your light and all your struggles and all your growth. Someone actually sees you for your imperfections, but sees you and gives you that space to be able to grow and heal and fix some of those imperfections and hopefully guide you down the right road. I think that's what seeing is. It's not only seeing, because seeing comes from, we can only see if there's light, right?
Yes.
There's light to fill a space. And that's what it is, to create a space full of light for you to actually grow into.
I guess from that moment, which clearly has resonated, and I think this goes beyond the subject of being Asian and Chinese and racism. Certainly that's one dynamic of all of this. But how have you taken that lesson in terms of making sure that you are a light for other people, that you do fight for the underdog, you do continue to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves? So how have you taken that lesson from when that teacher said that to you and have it's become a part of you, and how do you pay that forward?
I think that's become one of the pillars of my value system. For her to be able to say those words, because her name was Miss Watkins. She was white. She was a woman. She could still walk in my shoes and actually see me. And for that to happen, I realized that there's a choice between repeating this vicious cycle of the harms that's been done to you.
Right.
Actually practicing radical empathy in putting yourself in someone's shoes. Everyone comes from a place of hurt, comes from a place of brokenness, because life is just tough.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get away out of life without being hurt. Right?
Right.
So I think one example, and I struggle with this still every single day, just because of the forces and the pressure and the ease of placing people in a category, a stereotype, especially when there's forces like societal forces and cultural forces that come down on you, that are pervasive and so powerful.
Yeah.
Just like you said, I mean, without even knowing what race was, when I went to Hong Kong, and still not just Hong Kong, but in every single place I go to, in every single circle that I'm in, there's tendrils of racism everywhere. And I'm not just saying racism being done to me, being a person from another culture, a minority, a person of color, but racism done by my in-group, myself to other people, and placing them in the circle of other, in the circle of not my tribe, someone else. I remember, I think this is last year. I mean, there's a huge element of anti-Asian hate during the pandemic here in Canada as well, because hate crimes were rising every single place.
Yeah.
I personally experienced this several times. When I'm walking down this one day, someone would say, "Get that Asian sick away from me," or call me the C word right out. But I just don't know, because it's so hard for me to, when I see these people, like when you visited, you saw the addiction in this area and how serious that is. So it's hard for me to blame them. I know it's wrong. I know what they say it's wrong, but it's hard for me to compile that on top of the cause or whatever mental struggles that they're dealing with around here.
Right.
I know it's easy to seep into that, because during that time, there was a anti-Asian hate rally at the Art Gallery downtown here, invited me up as a speaker, and I was speaking out on it. And at that event, there were so many elements of politics in there, because there was the main group and the people who organized the event was anti-Asian hate. And then there were anti-COVID protesters surrounding the area. And then there were anti-COVID protesters protesting them.
Wait, anti?
So there was,
Oh, okay.
So there was protesters protesting.
Got it.
That we have to quarantine and wear masks. And then there's protesting the protesters who are protesting that. I think this is why there's so much momentum behind protests, because sometimes it's for the right reasons, but there is just this force of anger and negativity that draws other anger and hate and negativity together.
Yes.
That is just so powerful.
Right.
Right? Because it's easier to hate something, whereas love, it's such a process that takes work to build. Right? I was speaking at this protest, and one of the anti-COVID protesters came into the crowd.
Yeah.
And we could tell because he was wearing this huge bird mask.
Like the gas mask things?
Yeah, from like the tuberculosis era, like the bird of death thing, right? The gas mask thing. And then he said, "Shut up, chink," in the middle of surrounded by Asians at an anti-hate protest. He would say that. And he was yelling something else as well. I didn't really notice until the crowd started screaming, shame. I'm like, what's going on? And I see people chasing this guy through the crowd, trying to get him out. It was like, I guess we were an organism. And this is how the body protects itself. Like all these white blood cells, like macrophages, were chasing this virus.
Yeah.
Like it's literally like hate is a virus. We're going to chase this guy out by yelling shame. So I had the microphone. I'm standing up there and I started going shame. And my voice, because it's magnified, it's so powerful. I regretted it, not at the instant, because I was so taken over by it, by the power. Like I felt corrupted by the power.
Okay.
Because then the whole crowd started turning against this guy. They could have ripped him apart.
Right.
But I kept going. And then I said something, we're here to stand. We're not going anywhere. Anti-Asian hate, shame, get out. But after the event, I immediately regretted it because I think the right thing to do would have been to actually make a path for him and actually talk to him. Because I think to ask him to take off the mask and have a conversation, you actually talk to the actual person.
Yeah.
And to be able to communicate, to learn that medium of communication and to give him the space to actually express himself and to have a discussion. And we might not come to a place of agreement, but at least where we stand, we'll understand each other rather than putting him aside, because I don't think that fixes anything.
That's a strong story.
I think the conversation started with you asking, like, what were some situations where I felt like I was being prejudiced? I think, again, in my mind, there's always both sides. There's always both situations where I've acted in a way that I casted people aside as another, and many situations where I felt like I was treated not at the same playing field or as an underdog.
As you were talking, first of all, these are really incredible, powerful stories, Ludi. So thank you first and foremost for sharing them with me. And I think you have actually brought into light something that I think I actually do need to consider and be more aware of, which is racism isn't just like, for those who are in the underrepresented communities, people cast people in all sorts of different categories. And, you know, these are categories that go beyond race and skin color. I think we first have to recognize that as much as we are trying to make the change in a positive way, I think everyone also needs to own up to the fact that we, like you said, whether we'd like to admit this or not, we have all been indoctrinated with some degree of racism and casting other people as others in different ways. It's not just a one-way zone, and we need to all recognize that and also hold ourselves accountable. But the second thing also, at the time you were caught up in the moment, and not to defend, I mean, that was really a stupid thing that he did. And I don't condone his actions or his ideologies. But I do love that you said, like, you wish that you could create a pathway. But having said this, in some weird ways, this sort of ties into you as a kid going back to that moment about standing up for what's right to now. You were fighting. You were standing up for yourself, and you were standing up for what you believed in that was right. Now, till this day, it is a pillar of your person that you do stand up for what you believe in. The fact that you were speaking at this art gallery, and now you're talking about finding a new way to stand up and create a positive pathway. So I think that one thread has been consistent to like now. I feel like there has been, obviously, because we're all growing up and we're older and we find new ways, that you're finding new ways to advocate and stand up for what's right. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that feels so right for you to put it that way.
But sort of that understanding to be an advocate. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you just keep polishing away at the surface areas, the surface layers, because like fighting felt like the thing to do. But what's actually the value there? What's the core essence of the fighting is to stand up for yourself. I think to stand up for yourself, then you see the options you have in front of you. It's not just fighting. It's not just fist to fist fight, because there's right reasons to fight. And definitely, I think hate is not the right reason to fight. Right. Even like a war to end the war a war for the cause of peace I don't think you can say that's the right thing to do. It might be the necessary thing to do because it's the lesser evil.
Right.
But the lesser evil doesn't mean it's good.
I completely agree with that.
And to be an artist, I think this is why artists, I would say, have a responsibility to speak up, speak out, and stand up, is because artists are the representatives of culture. And artists are meant to create paths forward after you boil it down to its essence. If you see the only path forward as the use of force, then that's not very creative.
Right.
But when you start from the essence and you see many paths forward and you can express yourself in many ways, I think that's the essence of what an artist should be. And to use that creativity to stand up and using violence as a last resort. And again, you might not have any other options. This might be the only option and it's necessary.
Right.
But I think you have to keep that honesty, especially toward yourself, because I don't think it's ever the right thing to do. You might have to do it, but don't bullshit yourself.
Yeah.
That it's the right thing to do.
When did you figure this out?
Probably when I got like really hurt and it was like, this sucks. Probably, when I hurt somebody, I'm getting hurt myself too, because I'm actually narrowing my options. It's really funny that we're on a podcast called Repping because it's like a rep. The first instance where I learned the word rep isn't to represent, but it's repping it in the gym, like repetitions.
Yeah.
The more reps you do, the better you get at it, right? And you use fighting as a resort to resolve issues, the better you get at it and you limit your options to just that thing. I think repping it is defining yourself, and defining is making it more clear that this is the thing to do. When I hurt somebody, I'm actually narrowing my own options as well. And I'm more short-sighted. And I don't like that. I don't see that being the only option because then you have no escape.
But here's the thing that I also wanted to point out that really struck me. And I think this deserves some recognition. I really appreciate how you're able to step back and look at things and process things, and that you have this sort of bird's eye perspective. But here's the thing that I'd like to point out that I think was really interesting, which, listen, nothing scares you more than when your mom or your dad comes to get you. That's when you really need to get a change of pants.
It's funny because your parents always say the same thing too. When they're hitting you, they go, it hurts me more than it hurts you.
Yeah.
You know? Are you sure it hurts you more than, why don't we just walk then?
Why don't we try that? Yeah. But here's the thing, Ludi, just in this conversation, you talked about like how many fights you had gotten in order to survive. And I don't doubt that, because being the new kid anywhere, that's brutal. And you get picked on all the time. But here's what I want to point out. You could have very easily continued that path of violence and aggression and bitterness, because anger does fuel anger, right? Negativity does feed on negativity. And being that you were continually like picked on and you constantly had to fight in order to survive, you could have continued to grow up and form into someone who feeds off the violence, feeds off the aggression, the idea of needing to defend yourself through fighting could have cemented. And I say this because I had another conversation with this gentleman by the name of Arnold Michaelis, and he's going to be a guest on my podcast. He was a former white supremacist, and he totally got off on aggression and violence and like beating up on other people. He actually compared it to having a substance abuse issue.
Yeah.
You went completely the other way. You said it's about being light. It's about radical empathy. It's about now creating paths to have conversations so we can stop the hate.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing, that sort of trajectory. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think you need to, we talked about seeing someone, but you need to see yourself as well. You need to see yourself having the option of knowing that you can choose another way, a way that's different than the path that you've been shown all along.
Right.
You know how you said about anger breeds anger and violence breeds violence. Also, just by statistics alone, like domestic violence breeds domestic violence.
Yes.
But some people have that I don't know what it is, have that rare opportunity to glint themselves, to almost rise above yourself and seeing the situation that this is wrong. And I don't have to be perpetuating this cycle.
Correct.
And it's a constant struggle because it's just easier to lean into the examples that you've been shown.
Exactly.
I'm really curious to listen to the conversation that you're going to have with, what's his name?
His name is Arno Michaelis.
Arno.
He's now a Buddhist.
That's really interesting.
But when did you actually clock this and say, no, I need to grow here?
Yeah, I think everybody knows. I think that's the difference between, this isn't me, I heard this somewhere. I think that's the difference between lying and bullshit, is that lying is, you can't lie to yourself, but you can bullshit yourself because you can ignore the truth. I think confronting that within yourself, if you don't confront it, you're just bullshitting yourself, because I think at some point, everybody knows this when they're being hypocritical or unjustly unfair to other people or othering other people.
Mm-hmm.
But you just explain it away and you give yourself excuses. I think that's the essence of bullshit, is excusing yourself. Find another explanation for doing what you're doing.
Okay.
And I don't think it's easy. And actually, how I'm trying to do this, I won't claim that I've mastered this at all, because I think how I tried to do this, how I began to learn how to do this was actually from, I think, skateboarding.
Skateboarding.
Like on full wheel. Yeah. And a plank of wood.
No, I understand what skateboarding is.
When I started skateboarding and also snowboarding, a lot of my friends were already pro skateboarders. Like that crowd that bullied me that I felt, they're already great at it because it's a cool thing to do. It's a popular thing. And I had no idea. I didn't know how to begin to be cool. So when I fell into the sport, because that's what they did and I loved it, I wanted to get good at it, but I really sucked. Like I really sucked. So when they were doing these huge jumps and huge ramps, I didn't know how to do it. It was scary and I didn't know how to balance. I didn't have my footing. I didn't have the necessary technique or skill. So what I came up with is I just won't think about it and I'll just do it.
Okay.
I'll just literally blank out and I'll just go for it.
And you have all of your teeth and limbs.
Almost all of my teeth and limbs. I have broken a few bones. I was about to say that sometimes it results in disaster, but because like it's no good when you blank out and you're launching off of a 60-foot jump and you go limp.
Yeah.
Because you knew that you don't have the skills to land this.
It's not going to go well, Ludi.
So I think there's two ways to go about getting good at something or changing your mind or who you are. One, you go, I need to work on like from the inside out. I start with the inside, I change my belief, and then that will result in different behavior.
Right.
And secondly is if you don't know how to begin, if you don't even know that you're lying to yourself, then just start with changing your behavior. And once that feels good, then your beliefs will automatically change.
Right.
And then see what that results. There's a difference between just keeping something in your mind. Like there's a difference between fantasy and actually acting out a fantasy, which could be very dangerous. I don't recommend that in every situation. But if you just keep it as a mental process, a thought, without actualizing, speaking it, or physically acting upon it, it's not real. It doesn't have an effect on the real world. But once effect on the real world is once you start telling this to somebody, it commits you because it brings it into reality. And then you have no choice but to actually confront this with your mind and go, how does this fit into my actual life? How does this fit into my worldview?
Okay. I love all of that. And I second all of that. I think my own personal observation of some of the people around me and certainly what's happening stateside, there is a very deep chasm of disconnect between who people think they are versus what they actually do. The thing I think is really huge is that you were open to looking at all of this and willing to say, oh, shit, what have I done? The openness to be like, okay, this could be, to maybe looking within yourself and have accountability and responsibility and to say, hey, look, how am I a part of this? I think that's one very big nugget that many people may on a technical level have the capability, but do not do. And two, you are making all of those changes. And again, from your starting years as a kid, it would have been very easy to continue that trajectory of hate and aggression. The fact of the matter is that you didn't do that. I think that's pretty huge. I'll be very honest with you. There are many issues and situations that we can discuss that a lot of people believe one thing, and maybe they buy their own bullshit, but they don't actually exemplify the ideas or values that they think they hold. So let me give you a quick example. So I am first generation. I grew up in one of the boroughs of New York and a lot of childhood friends. We were having a conversation about how supporting certain statements would open the door and embolden racism and potentially put my personal safety in jeopardy because I am Chinese. This person looked at me in the face and said, "I'm not racist, I'm friends with you," which in itself is a racist comment. And they did not see, like it didn't even register. So for me to be on the receiving end of this, like where do I take that conversation? So I just want to say, pulling this all back, Ludi, the fact that you started in this situation where you had to fight and maybe not had to fight, or maybe you did at the time to survive and not get picked on. And you did have to stand up for yourself. That easily could have A, continued, and B, your ability to actually step back and look yourself and the openness to make those connections. I think that's huge because I believe that not everybody is able to do that.
Yeah, it sounds really painful for that person that said that to you, because I think to be a hypocrite has got to be one of the most strenuous things in the world. They
don't even know.
Yeah, I think that's the only way they could not know. And then we come into the territory of just being ignorant, right? In that case, it really takes a lot of time. And it's not up to anyone else's self-responsibility. It's up to yourself to want to change. And I think it was during a conversation with, I think it was Daniel Wu, who said that film and art is like a mirror. So it must be really difficult to constantly see these things reflected, like the truths that are reflected upon you, but that doesn't fit into your worldview, and ignoring all that. At some point, it's got to hit a crack and some light's got to shine through. And then you have to go, okay, this is the point where really I have to rethink myself. And then people can come and support you. It's through the people around me, a lot of times through them modeling things, the people I've interacted with. It's interesting that I've never had a role model, like a single role model that I went, wow, that person is amazing. It's exactly who I want to be. I talk about Bruce Lee sometimes, and actually I'm a new fan of Bruce Lee. It's only in the later years that I went, wow, when I learned about him, I went, wait, everything that he talks about, we're still dealing with this. How did he see this? That I delved into it. But in my formative years, I didn't really have that one role model besides the figures that I've been taught in Chinese history, like primary education, that were held as role models for the whole country, for our whole society. But when I became aware, I didn't have one person that I looked up to and went, this is who I want to be. A lot of people around me that I went, that is such a wonderful thing. Because sometimes it's not the natural thing for me to do. Because I've grown up in this environment where I was surrounded by scarcity and fear. And sometimes it's not the first reaction I have towards something. But I think that pause in between the receiving of information and your reaction, to be able to hold that pause for a sec and just went, what other options do I have at this moment? That's very important. And that's the time you can apply different behaviors that I've seen through my friends around me, through my circle of friends and people that were important to me in the past.
All right. So listen, I could talk to you all day and I really would love to continue this conversation. But in the meantime, Ludi, will you sign us off? Let me know who you are and what you represent.
Okay. Yeah, I really appreciate the conversation. It was just really nice to be able to sit down and have an actual conversation. Like this could go on forever. But for now, my name is Ludi Lin and I represent the people who feel constantly lost and are learning to love it.
Great thanks to Ludi Lin for all of his time, honesty, and insights that he shared. I had an absolute blast with Ludi. Make sure you go follow him on social media and keep up with his career. And I'm going to make it easy for you because I'll have all of his links in the episode description. Next up, he's originally from the Deep South. Author and stand-up comic Trey Crowder, also known as the Liberal Redneck.
Growing up this whole time, I was never shy about speaking my mind. And then I got into college, same thing. I was in college in 2008, and the night of the 2008 election, I literally drove around campus with my windows down, blasting "My President is Black" by Jeezy, because I was such a big, Obama guy. But I've always worn it all on my sleeve, or, lack of sleeves, whatever the case may be.
I am so excited to have him on, and you're not going to want to miss that one. Now, if you like this episode and you want to support the series, the best way to do it, and it's free, is to subscribe, share, and leave a review. And download all the episodes because they are available. So slam on that button and get them on your devices. Also, don't forget, go check out my YouTube page and Instagram because on each of those platforms, there will be different goodies there. And you're going to want to see what happened after the show and hear what kind of gag Ludi played on the set of Kung Fu and what kind of prank he played on me. Thank you always to my incredible team for their time, care, and talent. Rep It is a Suburban Outlaw Productions. Until next time, stand up and represent.